While most terrestrial orchids are difficult to grow, this species, Bletula striata, also known as the Chinese ground orchid, is perhaps the easiest species of all terrestrial orchid to cultivate, and today's video will focus on this plant. The intense purple-pink flowers are borne alternately and sequentially on the stem and give the plant its Japanese name Shiran, meaning purple orchid. Plants grown in full sun flower generously, but also are magnets for aphids, as can be seen in this cluster of flowers. Large amounts of seed is produced every year and can be sown directly into garden soil, unlike other orchids that demand aseptic laboratory conditions. Okay, let's look at some of the more unusual and rare varieties of Bletula striata. Here is a form called Murasaki Shikibu. This plant was first found in Oita Prefecture in Kyushu. It is supposed to come true from seed, and I believe it to be a true form of the species. The flowers have a light blue cerulean type lavender cast about them, and as you can see, they tend to be held in a more upright stance than compared to the normal variety. Also notice that the flowers tend to be more tightly clustered than the typical forms. The other well-known blue flowered or blue cast form is this Soju. This is well, here you can see the plant. It's actually quite easy to grow and clumps fairly well. Tends to be a bit smaller in stature than the typical Bletula striata, and I was told to grow it a little bit more shady. It doesn't seem to respond as well with sunlight, but I haven't really noticed that. Here you can see it in comparison to Murasaki Shikibu, which is a much beefier plant, but the flower stalks tend to be a little bit shorter, in fact, so it's more stocky. There is the possibility that Soju is in fact a hybrid. I've talked to a number of growers, and there seems to be some consensus that this may not actually be a pure Bletula striata. Supposedly it was found in Wakayama Ken, which is or Wakayama Prefecture, which is up in the Honshu island area. The flowers on this form are quite different from Murasaki Shikibu. They're much more spaced out on the flower stem. Everything about the plant is much more gracile, and you can see that the lip has a different structure to it as well. It definitely has a deeper purple cast and more pointed segments. Let me go ahead and run over real quick to Murasaki Shikibu, and you can see. So here actually, hold on. Here are the two flowers together, and you can see the big difference between the two of them. Murasaki Shikibu much more beefy and stout, and Soju more of a spidery affair. Here's another variety that's fairly commonly available in the West. This is variety Rosia. Flowers got hit a little bit by aphids and fungi this year, but yeah, another pretty one. Very pale colored with that purple rim around the lip. Here's a deeper colored flowered form, unnamed. Very beautiful. And a close-up of the semi-alba in flower. You can see it's a semi-alba because there is a tinge of pink on the tip of the column there. Another interesting form is this type that has marginal variegation on the flowers themselves, again known as fukurin variegation in Japanese. Another interesting form is this trileps, which is a pyloric flower. That is, it has 3 lips instead of 3 petals, plus also the sepals. This form has no viable pollen, but it can receive pollen, so it can be a seed parent. The flowers tend to be displayed in a more vertical fashion, so they aren't held so nicely. However, it is a very deep color, very rich lavender, and quite interesting form. The hybrid between Bletula striata and the Chinese yellow-flowered Bletula acracea is this Bletula brigantes. I have found these to be no more difficult to grow and keep than other Bletula. Perhaps a little bit slower to expand, but a very worthwhile plant growing with a lovely yellow contrast in the lip and otherwise purple-pink flower. Finally, here is the Chinese species Bletula acracea, yellow flowering. Nice lip on these. Some forms of Bletula acracea flush a purple color. You can see they retain that reddish-brown color on the lowest part of the stem and the leaves from when they first flush. Here's my patch of Bletula striata at my house. The form in the foreground with the purple flowers is albostriata, which is this marginal variegated leaf form, and in the back there is a kind of a semi-alba form. These plants are really easy to grow. I mean, you can see that they started just very small clumps about 5 or 6 years ago, and now they have expanded very far. They also are magnets for aphids and then the ants that farm the aphids. But this is such a strong plant that it really doesn't affect it in the long run. There's the marginal leaf variegation, which is known as fukurin in Japanese. And here is the flowering of this plant. Very lovely, very vigorous. This is an example of how Bletula, or any terrestrial orchid, should go dormant. As you can see, the leaves are turning from a yellow to a green and then a brown. This is a healthy way for a plant to go dormant. If it goes from green to straight kind of a black or brown, that means that the plant has not had the chance to transfer its nutrients from the leaves into the rootstock. So this is the kind of dormancy you want to see in a deciduous orchid. Normally I wouldn't mess with a plant this time of year. This is just after flowering in June. But I wanted to show you the basic structure of a Bletula root system. You can see that the rhizome is bulbous, and there are a number of roots coming off. You can see the new roots coming there. These can be stripped of their roots in the fall and dried. Whether they have growing eyes or not is irrelevant. They will come back. This is one strong plant, and here you can see the growth. So normally I would not do it this time of year, but this is such a strong plant that it's actually not going to hurt it, this kind of ill treatment, even this time of year, amazingly enough. Really, really sturdy species.